So hello everyone, and in this video we are going to learn some responsive tricks that we can use to make our website a bit better than just simply using pixel values or rem values. So for time being, I have a text in the center and it has been given 70 pixels. The left image is 17% and then given absolute with percentage because that's a good way to do it instead of pixels. Same with this thing, 17 percentage, and I should have changed to percent. There we go. Now if I show you guys the live page, this is how it looks. If I go to inspect, let me click on this icon. You could see one thing is that the image gets smaller and bigger based on our screen size. Now the reason why that happens is simply because it is taking 17% of the full width. So it's going to be 17% of the full width. So if it's smaller, obviously it's going to be smaller. But when you use pixel value, it does not change. You could say it is still the same size no matter what we do. So on a wide screen like 4K, this is how it's going to look. The text would be like way too small and kind of annoying to look at. So we use something called clamp. So before we use clamp, I need to explain you guys one simple thing, and that is viewport width. This is viewport width, and this is kind of percentage on left to right side. So you could see that now I've set this to 4% kinda. You could see this is how it looks with 4 viewport width size. If I now go to inspect, you can see it's going to be staying in percentage size like this. But the problem with this comes when it starts getting smaller. For bigger sizes, it looks okay, like it is staying in percentage, right? Because it's using 4 viewport width no matter how big the screen size is. But when it gets like smaller, which is like this size, like 1366 or something like that, it starts getting weirder. It starts looking like very small. So here's what we can do. We can use something called clamp. So what clamp does is that it will say that, hey, do not go below this size and do not go above this size. So before that, let me show some pixel value. Ideally you should use rem, and I'm just going to check how small it should be at least. So I would say it should never be below 60 pixels like this. Okay, or maybe we can go even lower. So I'll say it should never go below 45 pixels. And then I'm going to scale it up and say that it should never go above 90 pixels. You should do rem ideally, but again, use pixels if you want, but rem is a better way to do it. So 45 and 90 are my limit. And then viewport width, I have decided to use, I guess, 4 or maybe 4.5. So what we need to do is, for us to not go below 45 pixels and not go above 90 pixels and use 4.5 viewport width, we can simply type clamp, open brackets. The first is the minimum value, so it should never go below 45 pixels. The middle one is the one that will basically, stretch and all that stuff, like the responsive or percentage related value. It is added around here, and then we add the maximum value, which is 90 pixels. So it would never go below 45. It would never go above 90 pixels, and 4.5 viewport is how much the size it would stay. It would stay for 4.5 viewport width, but it would never go below this and this much. And this is a percentage. If you use viewport width or viewport height or percentage, it's basically based on the screen size. So this is like very responsive related stuff. So let's copy this clamp. Let's go into our text, and here we will select the pen icon and copy this. And suddenly you would see that it is looking like this. So let's do publish and do a check how it looks. So again, this is how it looks. Now if I do inspect, if I go smaller, you could see that it's not changing. The size is not changing around here because it is never going above 90 pixels, because 4.5 viewport would be like way bigger around here. So if I go smaller, you could see it starts getting smaller right now, because now it's being like, hey, I can now use 4.5 viewport width because it is lower than 90 pixels, and it will go below until it cannot go below 45 pixels. So it will never go below 45 pixels and it will never go above 90 pixels. And 4.5 viewport width would be used for scaling and all, but it's basically saying that I would never go above 90 and I will never go below 45 pixels of size. And the best part is it doesn't have to be just text. You could even use it for anything else. For example, in my images, you could see that it gets like way too small around here, and I don't like that. So we could say that for the images, we can say for pixel value, we will get around, so 350 is, I guess, minimum size that I would like it to be, and then the maximum, and maybe I guess 430, 450 something I'll do as the max. And obviously the one that we wanted was 17%, right? So 350, 17 and 450, I guess. So let's try that adding. I forgot already the values. So we'll do minimum of 3 pixels. It should be 17%, and maximum of 450 pixels, like this. I typed calculate instead of clamp, by the way. So now it is looking perfect. Let's see in the live page. So this is how it's looking. Let's do inspect. And you could see it gets smaller, but it does not get smaller than 350 pixels. You could see, obviously we will need to do some more changes and try which values work better, but you could see it does not get lower than 350, but then it starts using 17% until it reaches 450, and it would never go above 450. So if I do it, let's say 5000, you could see it will never go above 450. Obviously this is not a accurate screen size, so we don't have to worry about that size. So again, this actually works for every single thing, for like sizing and all. Now there's another thing that I want to show. It's called minimum and maximum, called min and max. So when you type min and type, let's say 50% and then 500 pixels, what it would do is it will check, is 50% lower than 500 pixels? If yes, then it would use that one. If 500 pixels is lower than 50%, then it would use this one. So basically it would use whatever the lowest value is, and if I type max, it would use whichever the highest value is. So let's see what that means. I use this a lot for whole containers like this. Instead of using for images and all, I usually use it for containers, but it is totally okay to use it based on your design. But here I am saying that it should be minimum of whichever it is. So not this stuff, let's do 400. Okay, so it will be 400 pixel, or it would be 50%. So right now my screen size is 1920, so let's do divide by 2, because we are doing divide by 50, right? 50% of this is 960. So right now we have set it to be minimum of 50% and 400 pixels. So with my screen size, it is currently being like, is it minimum of 960 pixels or 400 pixels, like this, and whichever is the lowest value would be used. So in this current situation where this is like the full screen, it's going to use 400 pixels because that's the smaller value. But if I, let's say, go into inspect, right now you could see that no matter how big I make, it's always going to be 400 pixels. Why? Because it's always going to be 400 pixels, and it will always be less than 50% when it is so big. But what if I start making it smaller? So to make it smaller than 400 pixels, I'll need to actually make it like a lot smaller. So you could see that till this point, which is 900, it's still being like same. So until 800 pixels, because 800 pixels divided by 2 is 400, so it's minimum of 400. But when it starts getting lower, then this value starts getting smaller, because right now it is going to be smaller than 400 pixels, so it would be smaller than this value. So if I go below, it's suddenly starting to get smaller. You could see it didn't get any bigger than 400 pixels. You could see it does not get bigger, but as soon as it is smaller than this value, 400 pixels, it is starting to use 50%. And obviously if you change this to, let's say, 100%, it would basically be like, let me make this I guess 1000, let's do 800. Okay, just for this video purposes. So right now it is saying 100% or 800 pixels. Smaller value is 800 pixels, so it's using that. It will stay that for a long time, you could see. But as soon as it gets smaller, it is going to start taking 100% of the size. You could see now it is taking 100% of the size. Why? Because the 100% is now smaller than 800 pixels. Similarly, if we change this to max, is 100% bigger or 800 pixels bigger, it is going to use whichever the bigger value is. It is very much situation based, and most of the time I do use it for like these whole containers to create like particular designs. So I just did max of 50% or 800 pixels. You could see that it is now using 50% of the screen size because 50% of the screen size is bigger than 800 pixels. So it is saying that I would use max of 50% right now because it is bigger than 800 pixels. But as soon as I start making it smaller, it will start using 800 pixels. I think for max it is like kinda annoying because we have to do like more settings, like we can do grow and all to make sure that it does not shrink. Right now you could see it is shrinking even though we have set it to 800 pixels, but if you set it to grow, it would not shrink. Again, it's very much case by case related, so I'm just going to move forward. Another thing I've already shown is this VH, but the thing about VH is that it is now going 100 VH because it is the full screen size, right? So maybe let's make it, I guess, a darker color like this. So this is 100 VH because it is taking this size to this size, which is 100% of the height. Then we also have viewport width. Now viewport width and percentage are a bit different because you might think that, okay, so this is 100%, so it is same as using percentage, right? But no, the thing is viewport width uses the viewport width, whereas this percentage uses the parent container. So if I select this container and make this into a boxed, which is 1140, if I add this container, another container inside of this is going to use the 100% of this stuff. You could see it is now using 100% of this container or whatever the value is. This is in whatever the size of the parent container is. Whereas viewport width is different because it uses the viewport width. You could see, even though we have set this to box width, which should be 1140, this container is actually using the left to right sizing. And again, same with the headings and all. You could 100% go in here, and instead of using viewport width, you could use percentage. So rather than doing this much, you could go and do percentage, and that would also work. Okay, so again, it's not going bigger than 90 pixels. So you could see, you could also use percentage. The middle value is usually the value that should be like dynamic, and the left and right value should be something that is static. So another thing is this VH. Instead of using VH, I would suggest going into this pen icon and typing 100 DVH. So again, viewport height and it's dynamic. So DVH, I think this gives like much more easy explanation. So let me go in here, and here you can see in this site web dev blog viewport units, the difference between 100 VH and 100 DVH is simple. In the mobile, we have this top bar, right? When you open, let's say try opening in your mobile how this looks. Don't check by going into inspect, okay? I'm not saying to go from here, okay? In your actual mobile, you will see that there's a top bar where you add the URL. Because of this URL, the page starts from here and then it ends around here. You could see it ends outside it. So you could see that this top bar, right? This mobile top bar, the page actually starts from here. So the 100 VH is actually this much size, like this much size, but it is actually starting from here. So it's usually goes outside the screen until you scroll, and then after you scroll, it starts getting till here, right? Full screen size. And it can be kind of annoying if it's for a hero and all, and your design does not look or your design requires it to be like full screen size. For that, you could use dynamic VH, and what this basically does is that it will use this much as the height, but when you scroll up, it will basically automatically scale up to be like the full size. So it's dynamically changing it to be 100 VH. So again, for a good responsiveness, you use 100 DVH. And if you are doing some GSAP and all, then make sure to do some checking, because when you use 100 DVH, it is basically going to change, right? Whether you're scrolling or the URL bar is showing or not. So the size of it would change, and dynamically it would also change the height. So when you're using something like GSAP or some animation, then you need to just watch it carefully that it works nicely without any conflicts. Another thing is using percentage instead of using pixels when you're using position absolute. For example, this is my logo. I'm going to go into custom, and again, you're going to use percentage. Make sure it's position absolute. So it's going to be 15% off left to right like this. So you could see it gets bigger and all. And again, if you want to use this in a better way, you could use clamp or min max. Now the thing is, if I make this to be, let's say 50 pixels from the left and then 20 I guess 100, let's do 500, let's do 400, let's try 300. Okay, so 300 and like this. So you might be like, okay, this looks nice, but now if you go left, you would see that it is still being around here, even though the size was till this much, like smaller. Maybe let's make this bigger, something like this. So this is the size, but if I go to the left, it's going to be different. And the reason for this is I'm going to change this to pixels. That way it would be better explanation. 30 pixels, and then if I go left, you could see it is now being too much distance, because this is pixel, so it's like static value, it's not changing up and down. This is percentage, so it is actually changing up and down, but the left value is 50 pixels and the top value is 300. So you would see one thing is that now that if I make it go left to right, it does nicely, which is it scales up, but it is always going to be 50 pixels from here because that's the value that we gave, and it's always going to be 30 pixels around here. So you could see that it is not actually changing the size perfectly to our liking. And this is where you could simply just go and use percentage instead of using pixels, because percentage is dynamic value, right? Because the percentage is like based on your screen size. So just make sure to use percentage for a better responsiveness. It's still not going to be like fully accurate. For that, if you want to have like everything accurate space, then everything needs to be turned into percentage or some kind of dynamic value. So if I change this to something like dynamic value, maybe it might work. Let's see. Every element in that needs to be percentage or dynamic value based, else it would always be weirder. Let's turn this into, like, say viewport width. Maybe let's do like say 5.5. Now you could see if I change this to smaller, it is always going to be 5.5 and it's always going to be that size. So a simple example is just to use percentage and not use pixels or like static values basically. Next is called width fit content. So in this container, which is full width, I will add, let's say, a text and call it as I am this big. Make this white in color. Maybe make it a bit bigger. And just for the visual purposes, I will select this full width, give it, I guess, 10 pixels, 20 pixels, go into border, just for visual purposes, okay? Don't need to do all this. So this is how the full width container is. Because our text is this much, if I go into this one and make it be, let's say, align self, so it is now smaller, you could see that it would kind of be annoying to go in here and then make this smaller and then try to fit it like this. Why I'm not able to select. So you could see it would be kind of annoying, because even though I make it like this, which is 35, if I go left side, you could see it kind of change. It will kind of change based on your design. It is not changing for my case, probably because we're using boxed width. Let me change this to full width. So you could see it is now way bigger, and now this is way smaller. So we cannot simply create a container which has the same size, right? But if you go into this pen icon and type fit dash content, it will automatically turn to that size. So if I go smaller, you could see it is always being the same size as the inner elements. If I do duplicate, make it go left to right, you could see it is now perfectly being the size of whatever the elements are in there. If I add an image, it would be like simply that size. If you don't add this much, and if you use big percentage and maybe do 50, you could see that the size changes, because the 50% is also different, right? So just remember, there is something called fit content. It sometimes does not work based on what you have made inside. For this next example, I simply have our paragraph and I'm going to make this like very big. So here's what it is looking like. And if I go into my advanced and give it a CSS class called paragraph, or just call it para, like this. If you have Elementor Pro, you could do it this way, or you could use the method that I'm doing if you don't have Elementor Pro. But again, if you want to buy Elementor Pro, the link is in description. Just go use that link to support me. It's an affiliate link, or you could use that link and do login. You could simply go and register on their site so that you get some of the free templates, not all of them, but you at least get free templates if you register. But using my link and then doing register or buying simply just supports me, and you also get the product and you don't have to pay or do anything extra. It's just a way Elementor knows that you came from me. So again, if you have Elementor Pro, you could simply do this method. If you don't, just keep watching. You could type selector and type max width 50 ch, and again it's not doing anything because this is a paragraph, right? So this is considered as paragraph because P, if I go to the code, this is all added in a P tag. I don't know why it's not showing. By default it's added in P tag. You need to go into custom CSS, type selector space what we want to control. We want to control the P, and we are saying max width 50 character. So it would never be above 50 character. If you don't have Elementor Pro, go into layout and use the CSS class. Below all of this, add an HTML widget. So in that HTML widget, go and type style like this. Type dot para because that's the CSS class we want to control. And then we'll type same thing, which is max width 50 ch. Nothing's happening because we need to go and type P. So in the paragraph class for the P, make sure the max width is 50 ch. And this is a good way to do some responsive stuff. And also one more thing, when you add a HTML widget, it is considered as a widget. So when you go in here, you could see that there's actually gap between both of this widget based on this stuff. So maybe if you add this in here and you're like, why is my design not aligning and all, make sure to like go in here responsive and hide it. Or you could do is you could completely add this in a different container, which is what I like to do more, which is go in and add in a different container and basically select this, do everything 0 0 0 so that no space has been taking, and in the responsiveness basically hide it. So the code would still work, but again this is not going to take any space and you don't have to worry about playing around with gaps and all. Then I want to show something called order. I think most of you guys might probably know this, but lots of people just don't know about this. So let me go into our container and add 3 containers. Okay, let's just make it full width. I'm going to add a text in here and call it as title 1 like this. So you could see this is the container that I made, which has title 1. I'm just going to duplicate it 2 more times, and this would be title 2 and this one would be title 3. Now in your design, you probably made it something like this, like let's say left to right. Okay, so title 1, title 2, title 3. When you go to something like mobile, you don't want to do left to right because it's going to take too much space. So you're probably going to be like left to right. But let's say you want it to be in opposite. So the easiest way to do it in opposite way is obviously use column reverse, and then it goes to title 3 to 1, right? But then you're like, okay, so I created this design, but I would like the title 2 to be above here and then have title, have the title 2 around here and then have title 2, title 3. For example, maybe in here you added an image to create like a cool effect. Like added an image in here to create like a cool effect. But in your mobile, it does not look good and you want this image to be on top and then have title 2, 1 and 3. It would be kind of annoying to do it, right? Because you will probably be like, okay, so I need to create 2 of them to responsive and all. It's kind of annoying. Obviously, even reversing it is going to not do anything. For that, we do simple one thing. We go into this container and then we can basically say start. And when you do start, it's suddenly on top around here, you could see, and then it is title 1, title 3. Even though the order of it is in this way in the structure, you could see that it's in the second one, but it's on the top. Obviously, if you do end, it would be in here. But if you want even more control, you could click on custom and then say 1. But you can see nothing actually happened when you add a 1 in here, because you need to go into each one of them and say which one should show first. So I'll do title 3 as the second one. So let's do 2 and the title 1 to be 3. So you can see that even though this container is at the top, it is around here. This container, even though it's in the middle, it's on the top, and this container, even though it's the third one, it's in the middle. So you can create your own unique design and with order. And the reason why I found this, because I didn't really know this option for a long time, is because when I did some animations with GSAP, using column reversed kinda messed it up with the GSAP animation, because it does like one after another. But if you use column vertical and then change some orders, then it works like perfectly fine without having to do much stuff and not having to do like much crazy controls and all. So for the last one, we are actually going to use the stuff that we already learned, but I want to show you one important thing or method that it is very dependent on your case. But you know, there's been so many situations for me where I would create a container which is a header. So this is basically like image and heading, and I've simply just made it full width and space between so that it is placed like this. And below this is a container which is 1200 pixels in box width, and this container is just a way to like check how the size is. And I've also made this header to be fixed position so that it is sticky like this. One issue is if I go to this container and let's say make this be let's say 20 and 20 padding, and then let's do 10 padding, and let's do 50 like this. The thing is, it's very hard to align with this stuff when we are working with full width header and all. So if I make it bigger, it's going to be something like this, and if I make it smaller, it's going to be something like this. So if I refresh now, you could see if I make it smaller, you could see that the header is not aligned right now, which is kind of annoying, because I like how this looks. I should probably give, let's say, padding on the left like this. Let's do 20 padding just for the sake of this video. So you can see that when it is big, it looks okay because it's a full width size and this is totally okay design. But if it gets smaller, it kind of gets annoying because this is set to full width, right? This is set to what do you call 1200 pixels. So this is 1200 pixels, and when our screen size is lower than that, it basically acts like a full width screen, right? But for our header, which is this one, we have given left and right 50 pixels. So it is 50 pixel, 50 pixel. So the alignment completely changes. And if I make this one to be, let's say 1200, then obviously it's not going to be at the left and right, and it would not look good, right? It would basically, this header or this logo would be around here, and this menu would be around here, and everything else would be like empty space left and right. So with the min and max value that we created before, I practiced this with a bit, and it works. It is very much case by case. Okay, so let's just see what we can do. So you could see there is something called padding left and padding right with minimum of this calculation and minimum of this calculation. So we already learned what minimum is. It's basically get whatever the smallest value is between these two, right? But in the right side, we actually have done even more calculation. So to explain to you the right calculation, I'm basically taking the left to right size, so 100 pixels fully. So for this one, it would be like 2443, right? And if we make it smaller, it's going to be that value, okay? Minus 1500 pixels. Because when I practiced it, it was for 1500. So for this video, we have kept it to 1200, right? What was it? 1200. So we will basically do is we will take this size and minus this much, like this red area left to right. So we get left black area and right black area. And then if I do divide by 2, then I can get only the value of one of it. So to quickly explain, we are basically taking the 100% size. We are doing minus of this much, like this much. When you do minus of this much, we get this and this area. But we want only one of it, so we do divide by 2 of this one, so we get only one. That then we get the value of like individual ones. So both of these are same, right? So we get like left and right value padding basically. Going to advanced, and here I will select this pen icon, and it will kind of get slower. I don't know why it gets slower. On the padding right, I will add the same thing, and on the padding left, I will add the same thing. And let's do publish. You could see that it is doing left and right, which is 100 pixels, because 100 pixels is smaller than this value, right? So this, from this to this, it is actually smaller than that. If I keep going and middle, you could see that it suddenly turned into this size. Just one more thing, it was not actually working well with minimum, obviously, because I don't know why I even did that. But clamp would work. Basically, it would never go below 20 pixels and it would never go above 100 pixels, and in between it would use this stuff. So let's use clamp and then add it on the right and then left. Let's do publish, and you can see that now it is using 100 pixel, but if I go closer, it is now being nicely around here, because it is 1200 pixels. So it is not creating that weird spacing issues, and it is always going to be aligned. When it gets bigger, it is going to be like this because of the design choices. And again, you can see this is how it looks. So yeah, that was all for this video. If I find even more responsive tricks, then I will create a part 2 for this. So these are usually the one that I use to actually make the site feel much more responsive and have a nice experience. So thanks for watching, goodbye, and yeah.